Okay, I think are we live? Yeah, we are live now.
All right.
Yeah, cool. We can go ahead and get started.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. My name is Chandravaran Kunjeti, and I'll be your host today for your MS applications to EC and Triple E. So before we get to our first speaker, I'll just try to go over the contents of what we'll be covering. So in general, we'll be having before admits, after admits, and a little bit about a specialization as well. So first up, uh, we're going to be talking about before admits, and that will be Ayush Sharan will be our first speaker, and he has got an internship at R&D Siemens, as well as done his semester off at CAD Lab IASE working on morphing machines. So, and one fun fact is he's got admitted to all the programs he has applied to. So make sure you listen to every one of his points because they'll be important. Over to you, Ayush.
Yeah, thank you, CV. Am I visible and audible? Hope I am.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, guys. So I will first be walking you guys over the MS application procedure, largely because I spent the first 15 days or so of my MS journey just trying to figure out what this particular procedure was. And that's because everyone tells you about all the important shit, but no one actually told me about, how to start stuff. And that's been something that's common across most of the things that I've done in college. So here's just giving you a quick start into what actually happens from beginning till the end. So the first thing that you'll be doing is you'll be shortlisting universities. Obviously, you don't want to shortlist a university that you don't want to end up in. That is to say that don't apply to universities that you don't see yourself going to, which is uh, you don't want to just spend that application cash or spend all that application effort and then finally get admitted to this particular university and then decide, okay, this is actually someplace I don't want to go to. By that I mean that even when the worst situation does come, God forbid, you don't want to be like, okay, this is not my thing anyway. So do your do your due research about the particular universities much beforehand, and make sure that you have shortlisted the university that are the best fit for you. Don't go blindly by what everyone around you is going with, and ideally go with. Just keep in mind that this is your MS, it's your career, it's your future that you're kind of securing. So you can't essentially go by say a few of your friends are applying to university A, so it must be a good fit for you also. Just do your uh, do the research before. Make sure that make sure that you know that it's a perfect fit for you, and yeah, that's about all that you have to keep in mind. So just don't get swayed by what the crowd is doing. So what I have in the slide here is a snippet from my I kept a sheet of my own, Google Doc, wherein I kind of enlisted all the important information that I wanted to focus on, or rather information that I felt was more tailored for what I think would make a good fit for me as a student in their university. So largely what I focused on in this particular order, and this is how I prioritized it, was I first focused on what are labs and research centers, and basically what is the quantity of just the basic quantity of information that they have on your particular field of interest on their website. So obviously you'll find out much later as you do your research on these universities that there are many more labs and centers that are not mentioned on their main websites. You have to actually go digging a little bit more deeper. But at a very superficial level, you want to know that there's at least a good number of labs and research centers that are focusing on your area of interest, because that kind of shows that the university supports the research in that particular field. It encourages people to take up research in this particular field, and that there's a good amount of experience in your particular field of interest. So all three things become really good green flags as to why that might be a good fit for you also, because ideally you are going for getting more experience and exposure to that particular part of the industry or particular part of the area that you plan to expertise in. So do keep a track of that. So what I've done over here is, say you take the example of University of Washington. I've listed all the labs that I particularly found interesting. So these labs aren't exactly the same, but they do have quite a bit of similarities between them. So there's the Bespoke Silicon Group, which focuses a lot on hardware accelerators, but on the VLSI side. Then there's the Sci Lab and there's the Acme Lab, and they also focus on hardware accelerators, but maybe to a slightly lesser extent. So each of these labs are usually headed by one professor or maybe Very rarely you find it headed by two professors. That one professor has his specific area of interest, and what he does with that is he admits a lot of students, ideally PhD, some MS, and some even undergrad from the university who work with him on these particular projects. But each of these professors themselves don't work on just one area of interest; they work on multiple areas of interest with different weights assigned to each of these areas of interest. So what happens is you essentially have the so there might be one professor who dedicates say 70% of his time to VLSI, and the rest 30% of his time to say machine learning or something, and some other professor who might do 70% machine learning, 30% VLSI. So you keep a list of all the labs that have this kind of breakdown and what kind of impetus they're giving to your particular field of interest. And once that's done, you'll be able to make a much more informed decision as to which particular professors you would be interested in working with, or which particular professors' courses would be better for you. So all that information is available on the website. All you have to do is go to the grad website for all these universities, and you'll be able to find every bit of information that you could possibly want. So the next thing is listing down the professors themselves. So the labs and research centers, like I said, could be scattered across many professors. There have been like few professors who uh, work in other labs also as a in a secondary role as such. So note down the professors' names because this would be really elemental in your SOP side of things. When you do write your SOP, I think Fatwir will be talking about that in more detail soon. But to give you a gist of it, it's basically when you do write your SOP, you want to also show them that you're interested in the university by showing them that by talking about the different professors that you think would help you in your MS journey. So keep a note of that also. And the reason I'm saying you can note all this is because it's all in one place. You don't have to keep going back to the websites to accumulate this and get this information largely. So keep it all in one place and then just keep referring to it as and when required. So the next important thing is keeping a note of the application opening date. This varies from university to university. And largely what I found is it basically goes on with, say, I think September 1st, September mid is when everything usually starts. The general deadline for submission is around December 15th. Some programs do extend to say Feb 1st and even Jan 15th. And they have various reasons for that. So if you some universities have the deadlines by like Jan 1st, but if you submit by December 15th, then you're eligible for scholarship and stuff. So you still want to keep that part of things open. And so yeah, then the next thing is as a part of their application, they also make you mention which particular like specific fields of interest you'll be working on, and they'll give you a list of things. So the reason they do this is because you fill out say three areas of interest that particularly interest you, and then they direct your application to professors in that particular domain so that they can review it, and it's a more fair and unbiased review of your particular application. So people in your field itself would be reviewing the work that you've done in that field and the work that you plan to do or the plans that you have essentially. So that's the reason you have to also make sure that, and each of these they come and they all pretty much mean the same thing, but they come under different names. So in the application is just extremely helpful to just have this list ready, and you can just directly go back to your Sheets doc and see what's the priority you've given and just immediately add it off. The next most important thing is the number of LORs required. I will be elaborating more on this in detail, but do keep a note of the number of LORs that these universities require. The reason being that it's extremely crucial. What I have found is that the minimum number of LORs anyone requires is usually three. Some universities even allow minimum two. Maximum can go up to like even six if you want, but yeah, ideally you can stick to around the three, and if you're really daring, go for four. Then after that, you have your GRE and TOEFL, IELTS stuff. That is the supporting exams that you have to give. So these exams are also there's quite a bit to talk about, but largely many universities have um, certain benchmarks as to what they criterize as good scores essentially. So you want to keep that in mind when you prepare for your GRE. So some universities say that getting a 168 out of 170 in the quant section is a uh, pretty, pretty good green flag for them. So keep that in mind. Maybe you'll be able to practice along the lines of trying to get 160 out of 170. But all this information is usually written on their websites, and like you don't want to start preparing for this, give the exam, and then find out that there was something else that they were looking for that you didn't know. So do your prior research on all this and make sure that you've noted out each and everything that should be noted down. and then only begin your preparation. The thing about TOEFL is the one that's mandatory across all of them because it's your English review as such, and largely it's a very simple exam. But even then, it comes with basic practice that you have to do. And once you're done with that, I think it's a matter of just strategizing who you send your scores to and how you send it, and if you want to send it in the first place. So I'll be elaborating more on that also. Following that is the final straw of the entire application procedure, which is the supporting documents that are required. And these supporting documents include you will be requiring 3 LORs, one really good SOP. You'll be required to submit your resume as well and your scores. So these four are the main things that you'll be asked to submit. Some universities also make it clear that they want maybe an extra like I think they do require something extra as well, but these four are the basic minimum that are required across all universities. So keep sure that, I mean, just make sure that when you do go to the, so it'll be under the requirements of the admissions committee of the grad website of that university, where they'll mention that these are the particular requirements for admission into our yeah, into our program, and you have to make sure that you're satisfying all the possible, you're ticking all the check boxes largely. And yeah, again don't want to begin your application then find out that they require something that you might need time to get. So something that really ticked us off last year was the transcripts. Reason being that the transcripts came really late for us, and people who are applying to rolling programs, that is programs that begin evaluating as and when you submit. You want to submit it as early as possible so that the seats don't fill up before your application is reviewed. And if the transcripts are coming late, you can't do anything but just wait and not submit. So there are a lot of things you have to keep in mind when it comes to different universities, different programs and stuff. So do note it down and keep going back to those documents, keep seeing if you're up to date, and then create a list of at least 10 to 15 programs or universities that you plan to apply to. And then you start shortlisting slowly based on a lot of other factors like cost and how is this a better program or ranking of the university, etc. That's completely up to you. We can only help you make an informed decision, but at the end of the day, you'll be making that final decision. So the reason it's green in this particular image is because these are two of the universities that I plan to go ahead with my application with, and there are a couple of other universities that I highlighted in red for other reasons as well. So some of the reasons being that I think ETH Zurich or something had a clause where I had to take up a certain math course that they only required in my transcript. So even if I took up an extra MOOC or something on that math course, they wouldn't accept it. So anyway, you know that that's not going to be counted, and they're going to just invalidate your application. So you don't need to apply there. You can just instead apply to another program, maybe even a better program, maybe an equally good program, or maybe a slightly worse program for all you care. But you can dedicate your efforts to something else when you know that you're not filling the requirements. Okay, it's fine. Just move on. It's okay. There's going to be quite a few universities that have these kind of constraints. So yeah, these are largely the kind of information you want to consolidate all in one place so that you don't have to keep going back to the website. And the reason I say this is because the websites are very nested. So you'll have to go to one link and then another link inside that, another link inside that. You'll find like at least 10 tabs open by the time you realize you have all the information ready. So keep all this in one place, and that should help you get started. This you can do anytime pretty much, and it takes like 15 minutes, maybe even half an hour to get one university's information. So yeah, so you can go to the next slide. So yeah, the timeline that I figured would be, at least from what I've experienced, is that these applications open around September mid to October 1st. That's when they, and largely the deadline is 15 December for all the programs that I applied to. A couple of the CS programs I think had deadlines passing Jan. USC's program had a deadline of Jan 15th, but they said that if you want to be eligible for scholarship, apply by 15 December, which is basically their way of saying, screw you, just apply by 15 December. There's nothing you can do about that. And yeah, so coming to GRE and TOEFL, it's like I said, it's easy, but it's a little, you have to put in a good amount of effort, and it's also one of those things that it on that day, if you do have a bad day and you're not satisfied with the score, you have the option to give it again, albeit it comes at a cost, but you still can give it again. So you want to give yourself that extra extra window of say a month or so before you can reattempt that exam by preparing again. And so ideally try to finish off your GRE and TOEFLs by August, so that if you're not satisfied, worst case you're not satisfied, then give it again after a month's preparation, and then you'll be ready with the scores by the time the applications open up. So that's one thing. And yeah, finish your SOPs draft pretty quickly, as quickly as you can, but preferably by October 1st. The reason being that any senior or any mentor that you plan to get your SOP reviewed from, take it from me. Most of the people I got a review from always reviewed on weekends. So I'd get a bunch of updates or edits to make to my SOP on Saturday. I'd make those edits on Sunday, and then I'd realize that they get busy again throughout the rest of the week. So then again, they'd review it only on the next week. So largely, by the time you make even say three rounds of edits to your first SOP, a month is already passed, 3 or 4 rounds. So uh, time goes by really quick, especially when you're trying to draft an SOP and no one's responding to your review requests on time. So try to keep the first draft ready. That's all, by as soon as possible, because that's a minimum you can. That's a minimum you can do from your end, and after that, it's up to the reviewer to make it, suggest the edits, and then you'll keep making those edits as and when you can. But making the edits doesn't take time. It's the first drafts that takes time, because this is something that Fatwir will also elaborate on it later. But yeah, keep that in mind. And finally, yeah, so the LORs are also a pretty important part of the application if you don't know already. They're pretty vital because it's the one thing that you have zero control over. Reason being that you can only ask your professors or your mentors to give you an LOR, and once they've said yes, it's just word of mouth, right? So you have to still keep going and telling, okay, professor, my deadline is this. You have to come. I'm sending you the request from the portal. Can you please just send the LOR? And then after you say that, they'll ask you to give a write up, and there's a lot of process that goes into the LOR thing. So make sure that at least all the LOR things are sorted 1 month before, because it takes about a month's time for you to keep sending reminders and for them to finally upload it on the this thing on the portal. So to give you a fair estimate of what happened with me, I'd finished my entire application. All the documents were ready, all the SOPs were ready, and I was satisfied with the SOPs by November end. So that gave me 15 days. But even then, the LORs were submitted by around December 10th and December 12th, which is just 3 days before the deadline. So it was cutting it pretty close actually. And you can't blame them because the professors themselves are pretty busy. So they do take it does take a bit of time to write an LOR for you, and also go through the process of submitting it on the university's portals. Keep that in mind. Don't think that you can just ask them on the last day and they'll be ready with it. Some universities give you the option of submitting your application by the deadline, and then the LORs can come later on. But the thing is, if you submit it by the deadline and they review your application before the LORs come, then that's how they'll review it. So then that LOR is null and void to them, and you don't want that, because the LOR could really strengthen your profile. Actually, not really strengthen; it will strengthen your profile. So yeah, keep that in mind, and you will miss out on a good university if it's not submitted on time. Yeah, see, we can go to the next slide. So yeah, coming to the GRE. So I'll just put it in one sentence what I've told all my friends after writing the GRE. This is by far the single most tiring exam I've ever given my entire life. And it comes with a half an hour break that isn't half an hour, it lasts 10 minutes. And they just shove you back into the room as soon as possible. It's a 4 hour long exam, and it's the most annoying exam I've ever given. But that being said, it's still a pretty important exam. Reason being that a lot of universities, in fact, after the whole COVID scenario, have made it optional, or some universities don't even care about the GRE scores anymore. So when you do finalize your universities or shortlisted universities, make sure that this particular information is also written in your doc, as in if it's optional for them or if they've discarded it, or maybe they might even mandate it. Some universities do mandate it. The reason they do is because they expect a lot of applications to come through, and when they do expect a lot of applications to come through, it becomes it's that extra factor for them to evaluate a student with, which is the GRE score. So it makes it easier for them to filter out students. So that's the only reason I think that some universities have still mandated it, but largely they've made it optional or completely discarded. If they've completely discarded it, don't even worry about GRE for those particular things. They generally just don't care about your GRE scores. But if they made it optional, it's kind of tricky, because if you've got a bad score, don't send it to them. But because it won't affect your application that much. But if you've got a really good score, then definitely send it to them, because it will help your application. And a good score pretty has never hurt anyone. So if you've gone through the effort, spent that month preparing, and spent the 1 or 2 months preparing, got a really good score, even though it's going to cost a bit of cash, which get ready to blow a lot of cash in the entire application process. It might cost a bit of cash, but even then it's going to really strengthen your profile, because it's a good score. It's just another, even if it's a very insignificant addition to your profile, it's still a addition, and it's going to help you. One thing I do recommend is going through Greg Math's program. You can find it online. So how it works is you just have to pay $5, which is about what, $350, $400 max, $400 for a month's subscription. And he has a 1 month program. So this 1 month, he's out of 30 days, he does verbal and quant alternatively. And he so in on a verbal day he'll do all the the sentence equivalence and the text completion, reading comprehension, and the essay writing and stuff. And he'll make you practice that, and he gives you a lot of different strategies that can help you break down the verbal thing. So from what I've understood, the verbal section in GRE is basically like math. So it works on process of elimination. It works on more than actually a lot on process of elimination, but it also works on how you can dissect a particular sentence into various parts and then uh, just go about trying to figure out the answer. So it's not, obviously vocabulary plays a major role, but at the same time, if you don't have that good of a vocabulary, you can use a lot of his strategies that he's recommended and just nail the verbal section. And frankly, going through his like 1 month program for the verbal section was really helpful for me, because when in the final exam, when you do look at the questions, you kind of hear him telling you the strategy, saying that, okay, keep an eye out for this word, keep an eye out for that word, these are the keywords, these are the words that GRE is looking for. And once you do that, you've pretty much debunked the verbal section. About the quant section, since you're already in NITK, you actually don't have to worry too much about it. It's only a matter of you not losing your focus and making silly errors. So if you make silly errors, your quant score could drop a lot because everyone else is doing pretty well. And how it works is it's not like an absolute scoring scheme, right? It's kind of a relative scoring scheme. So depending on the people who write it that day, you get so it's out of 170, and it's not like there are some set number of questions that add up to 170. So based on each question has a different weightage and stuff, and based on, say you get the harder question right but a easier question wrong, and say everyone gets the easier question right, then your scores kind of drop. But if since you got the harder question right, your scores might not drop by that much. So it's a very weird scoring scheme. But at the same time, if it's a hard question, if it's a hard question that you're finding, you know that everyone else finds it hard. If it's an easy question, just make sure that you're not making any silly mistakes, because if you screw up the easy question, you're kind of fucked. And you don't want to be in a position where you lost out because you messed up an easy question because you lost focus. Because trust me, you will be losing focus in this particular exam. It's extremely annoying. They keep you there for 2 hours. You cannot like move between sections. It's not like you have 4 hours in total. It's split into different parts, and there's a break in the middle. They tell you that you can have food and shit, but you don't actually get to have food. I could have like one glass of water and I was back, and I was really famished by the time I left the hall. So it's just that's my personal experience, and I'm sure a lot of others have also experienced the same thing. But yeah, keep that in mind, and ideally try to look for a score above 325. Reason being that this means you got above 160 in both, naturally. And so what you can do is just the quant section, you can pretty much be certain that if without any silly errors, you'll get above 165. So make sure that your verbal section is around the 160 mark. And by make sure, I mean take all their mock tests, take all the practice tests that you're possibly able to get your hands on. I think when you register for GRE itself, they let you do 2 or 3 free practice tests. The thing about those practice tests is it's a little bit more, I personally felt it's a little bit more harder than the actual GRE. So my scores in that particular practice test were around the 315 to 320 mark. But then I felt that I did those practices much better than I did my actual GRE, and my actual GRE score was significantly better than those particular practice test scores. So they've made it a little harder intentionally. So don't worry about the scores, but just go through that entire process of this thing. So make sure that you're just following the right rules, following the strategies correctly, and you should be good to go. So don't worry about that at all. Also, you keep in mind that you can only send your scores to 4 places for free, after which they charge a certain fee for which you have to send your score. And this means that if you plan to apply to say 6 universities, then you can send it to 4 of them for free. The other two you'll have to send it to the other two, you'll have to pay for it. And uh, the reason I'm saying this is because when I wrote my GRE, even then I hadn't completely finalized all my universities. So out of the 4, I ended up sending it to only 2 of the ones that I ended up applying to. Two of the scores are sent to university that I didn't even apply to. So I had to actually pay for 4 new scores. And in the grand scheme of things, that extra 2 that I had to pay for could have helped me a lot in 8th sem. So yeah, just keep that in mind. Yeah, that's about it, I guess. About the AWA part, there's verbal, which is strategy based. There's quant, which is just don't make silly errors. AWA is just keep writing. So the longer you write, I think the more the better it is. Make sure you're not making grammatical errors, spelling errors, and stuff, and just keep writing. Don't worry about forming a particular this thing. Sorry, don't worry about forming like great structures and stuff to your essays. Obviously, it's better if you do have idea of how to write good essays, but the more content you add to your essays, the better. So I think that should do it. See, we can go to the next slide. So I'll keep this short. TOEFL is very, very similar to GRE in terms of how to prepare for it. This is the only thing that's mandatory across all universities. You need about 92 out of 120. I think that's what most universities recommend to as a basic minimum score to pass this particular thing. It's split into two halves. There's reading and listening first, which is very GRE, and then there's speaking and writing, which is not all GRE. The writing part is kind of GRE. The speaking part is just you have 1 minute to speak on a particular topic and just be as clear as possible. Don't hesitate. Don't stammer, don't do any of that, and don't add fillers and filler words and stuff like and stuff. Don't so practice to make sure that that's not there. And largely just I think a few days of practice should be more than enough. Give TOEFL after your GRE, because GRE I think is a slightly harder one. And once you have prepared for GRE, you're pretty much guaranteed a really good score in TOEFL, because the preparation just projects onto the other exam, and you'll do really well as long as you're confident about your preparation. So reading and listening should be very, very pieced, because it's very, very similar to GRE. Speaking is something that you do have to practice on. The Gyan doc that will be sent out has a lot of information about where you can try the speaking, because you can try it on the official websites as well, or you can refer to r/TOEFL advice on Reddit for tips from people pretty much everywhere. And once you do that, you can just there are those websites also where you can practice the 1 minute speaking thing, and you'll be good to go. It's just about building confidence for that particular section. Writing is again just keep writing. That's pretty much what the only thing that I've ever figured out among both the exams. So yeah, that's about it. So you can go to the next slide. I'll come to the last part of my talk. So the LOR is probably what I consider the most crucial aspect of my application. Not just because you have very little control over the entire thing, but also because it kind of validates everything that you do, right? So you can talk all the big talk that you're possibly talking in your SOP and stuff, but at the end of the day, if it's backed up by, say, a really reputed professor or someone external who's just saying, this guy is uh, this guy's worth his salt, and this guy he's actually done what he claims to do. So that's pretty much a really big green flag in my opinion. And that's how, I mean, yeah, you don't want to catfish people, right? So you don't want to catfish universities in particular. So make sure that your LORs are ones that stand out. One crucial thing you need to keep in mind about your LOR is you need to finalize your recommenders as early as you can. And the reason I say this is because, say the minimum number of LORs a university requires is 3. So you need to have three LORs you have to submit mandatorily, or else your application is just going to be invalid. And if it's invalid, there's literally no point. So you have to arrange three people who are going to recommend you. Now the thing is, these 3 people that you will finalize are going to be people who you'll be using for other universities as well. So the thing is, all of these 3 people, especially if they're professors, will have a limit as to the number of LORs that they plan to give out. Some professors, if you're really good, if you've done a lot of good work, and actually it depends on the professor. Even if you've not done too much work, some professors have the whole I don't mind. I can send how many ever LORs I want. Or some professors are like, only if you work for 6 months or more, I'll send how many ever LORs. Otherwise, I'm only going to send 3 or 4 or something. And some professors are like, even if you work for like 1.5 years, I'm only going to send 3. So one of my professors, even though I worked with him for like 2 years continuously, he in the end he just said, I'm going to give you only 3 LORs, and he was one of my stronger LOR contentions. So after a lot of convincing, I finally got him to pump that number up to 5, and then finally to 6. So that was a bit of a scare when it did happen, because this was one professor who I didn't even worry about the LOR situation. I just called him up one day thinking I'll just tell him about it. Pretty much that was the attitude that time. And then he hit me with the whole, I'm only going to give 3, and that kind of screwed me over, because I plan to apply to at least 5 or 6, and what am I going to do for the other 3 universities? So I had to end up convincing him to boost that particular number up. And the thing is, they are pretty stringent about the number of LORs that they give out. So you can't essentially just play around with that number. You have to respect that number after a certain point, and you have to plan accordingly. So if they only, if the minimum number of LORs that out of the three people, each recommender is giving us say five, then you can't apply to six programs if you have only three recommenders. You have to get more recommenders. So this comes with you doing more work here and there, you taking up more responsibility here and there. So you can find, say, another professor who can add on to the six program or seven program and so on. So make sure that you've got your LOR situation sorted out. I had to create a separate um, doc just for which professors or which mentors are sending LORs to which university, so that I can keep track of that. And one more thing I did notice is I used to, especially after the talk with that particular professor, I was a little scared about bringing up the discussion with other professors. But I did realize at the end of the whole process that it is a very professional discussion, and shying away from that discussion is the worst thing that you can possibly do. Reason being that even if when you start work, you can literally just tell the professor that this is my objective. I plan to work with you on this. I want to get the experience that is there, but I also plan on asking you for an LOR later. What are your requirements? So if I ask you for an LOR, do you want me to work certain number of hours? Do you want me to publish a paper? What are your requirements that makes you, give LORs to your students? And thing is, if you don't have that discussion early on, what you're going to do is you're just going to work normally. You're going to stay within the bounds of whatever you assumed was the basic idea that this professor had for the whole thing. And once the whole thing is over, you'll realize that this professor is still stringent about not giving LORs beyond for not going beyond, and then you're just pretty much stuck, and you've just spent all your time, gain the experience, that's great, but you don't have the LOR, and you're one recommender short. So now you have to arrange another recommender as soon as possible, and it may not be as strong as this guy is. So that's also something that you have to keep in mind. I think the last thing that I'd probably leave you with is each of the professors and each of the mentors, they require a brief write up about who you are, what you've done, and what work you've done with them. So keep that brief write up ready. It may be just a page or so. Largely, what you can include is it's not the letter exactly, it's just stuff about you that they'll refer to, and then they'll write the letter on. So don't write the letter yourself. Ideally, don't. Maybe some professors might require to write that. That's okay, write the letter then. But the professors who don't, they'll ask you to write a brief write-up. And this write-up will include, say, your GPA and when did you start working with them? What is your first interaction with them? How long have you worked with them? What projects have you worked on? More than that, how have you helped them? How have you helped their lab? How have you helped their PhD students? How have you contributed to the particular project? How have you, like, is the contribution significant? You can remind them that, this is a really significant contribution, or push or something that you made to the entire project that, actually accelerated things. And did you present the project for them? Did you do this for them? Like, just mention all of that in one place, so that when they're writing the LOR, they're like, oh yeah, this guy actually did this shit. And then they'll write a really strong LOR, in fact. And one thing you do have to know is, so there's a good balance you have between a really reputed professor who's going to write a okay LOR, and a not so reputed professor who you've worked with for a long time, who writes a very very strong LOR. So okay LOR, because the okay LOR, even though it comes from a really great professor, it's still the reason it. I mean, it's at the end of the day, it's still an okay LOR. It doesn't exactly validate the hype that you've built up in your SOP, because everyone hypes it up in their SOP, and everyone makes it out to be like, it's awesome and shit. So you want the LORs to also reflect that kind of energy, and if it's not reflecting that kind of energy, it kind of unbalances the scale. So it's obviously good if you have the reputed professor. It does help. It has its own merits, but at the same time, don't uh, don't discard the so-so professors that you consider so-so. And if they're giving a strong LOR, in fact, just go for it. Even if they're not professors and they're mentors from an internship or something, it'll really help your cause. Yeah, the last thing is, some universities have a limit on the number of academic and number of professional LORs that they require. So make sure that you actually follow through on that particular requirement. Don't mess around with those requirements, because again, your application will be null and void after that. So I think that's about it. That's about it from me. I'm Ayush, and I'll be handing it over back to CV for the other speakers to take.
Yeah. Thank you, Ayush. That was really insightful on GRE LORs as well as the MS application. There are a few questions that I would like to ask from the host perspective. So, when you're trying, there is one question that most people who are applying to an MS application always stumble upon is how you grade as to which college you think you will be going to versus another one which you won't be going to. For example, even though you've applied to 10 colleges, you will have a ranking within those colleges, right? So, how exactly or what factors do you say are the most important on deciding which of those colleges to pick first, second, third, and so on and so forth?
Okay, so first of all, that's an extremely personalized question, but I'll give you my perspective on that. The reason being that there are factors that become very specific to that particular individual. One of those factors is cost. So each of the universities, it's not the same cost that you pay for each of the universities. You have to make sure that your finances are in check and you can actually afford to go to those particular universities. So say you have to choose between University A and University B, both are equally good in one particular aspect, but one is way more expensive than the other, then obviously you'd prefer University A over B because everything else is good, but the cost is obviously much more significant here. And the second thing you have to consider is maybe scholarship opportunities, RATship opportunities. That is also one thing. But that is the cost side of things. So, but excluding the cost side of things, what I particularly focused on was the number of research labs that were there in this particular domain, the number of professors that were working on my particular field, computer architecture, and the number of publications that came out in the last 3 4 years on hardware accelerators for machine learning in specific. So that is specifically what I wanted to work on, and I wanted to see how many how much impetus was given to that one particular field of computer architecture. So that is one thing that really helped me decide. The second thing is when you do talk to seniors from those particular universities, you get an idea of which particular professors you want to work with, and these professors take courses as well. So if your objective is to go for a PhD or a job or whatever, you need to find out which particular courses are the ones that are being looked at by external evaluators and recruiters and stuff. So that is also one thing. Go through the course contents of each of the courses that you plan to take on. You can also mention this in your recipe, saying that I plan to take up course so and so, because I plan to learn this particular aspect of this particular subject here. So uh, that entire, like, having that entire plan in mind, a very skeletal plan of how you plan to go about your MS, is pretty crucial, because then it helps you really prioritize which university comes ahead of the other.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you, Ayush, for those inputs. There are a few more points that I would like to add on for the GRE and LOR perspective. So, the GRE, one thing that I use personally for you to determine if I'm going to apply to a college or not is probably looking at the averages and the statistics for each of the sections of quant, verbal, as well as your AWA. So, if a simple thumb rule would be like if your scores are below the average for all of these sections, then you should probably keep this college in the gray area and not really think about it. But unless you actually have supporting stuff like internships, SOP, strong SOP, obviously these things will support your application more than a GRE. But I'm just saying that on the ranking list, it may come a little bit lower because you may not be able to actually get an admit, because sometimes that crucial thing is there'll be 600 different applicants for a particular program, and sometimes the GRE may become your deciding factor. And one more thing, also, as Ayush also said, that when you're taking LOR, I applied to more number of colleges. Like I almost applied to 10 colleges and 11 courses. So the requirements I had for my LOR were much higher. So obviously, it's pretty good to ask. You can basically keep repeat type of LOR perspective. Like for example, I had two professors I worked with for a very long time. One is a really well-known professor, while the other one is not as well-known and is not in the same field as me. So obviously, had a limit on the number of LORs. So wherever I didn't provide Professor A, I would make sure that I would provide Professor B. So as the overall perspective of your academic structure or academic achievements, as well as your professional career and internships or research, would also be compensated by making sure that all the LORs cover all aspects of your application per se. Okay, just moving on. Let's move on to the next section. So next, we have Fatwir, who has got the Dadwise scholarship as well as worked in Spectrum Lab in ISC. Over to you, Fatwir.
Hi guys. Today I'll be speaking about the statement of purpose, which is a very crucial component of your application. So basically, the statement of purpose is a document that reasons out as to why you should be chosen for the program, and it highlights all the details about your academic achievements and your academic details. So it can take around 2 months. So ideally, it would be best to start early. Say you could have the first draft ready by early September, and as Ayush said, you could start giving it out to seniors for their review. So probably you will have the final draft ready by mid-November in that case. And once you have your final draft ready by mid-November, and then it is just a few changes that you need to make, uh, such that the SOP becomes university specific. And keep in mind that it is very important to keep the SOP university specific, and you should include a few details that I'll be going over. So yeah, get it reviewed around by 2 to 3 seniors and have multiple iterations till till a point when you're satisfied with the final draft. And yeah, so the following points must be mentioned in your SOP, and these needn't necessarily be there, but it's always best that you have these points in your SOP, and it'll really help your application stand out. So the first is as to how you'll be a good fit to the program and how the program will be a good fit to your academic requirements. And it is very important that you research well on the universities and see how well this program is going to be in align with your field. If it is for a PhD that you're looking into, then it will be recommended that you look at the work of certain professors and see if that particular field really excites your interest you. And or if it is the industry that you're going into, then you should see how many industrial collaborations that that particular program offers, and things like that. Then you should give details succinctly about a few relevant projects, especially the motivation part. So the technical part of the projects can be elaborated a bit on in your resume, but when you write your SOP, you don't need to necessarily explain about the. I mean, you could just give a few details about the technicalities, but it would be good to give the motivation as to why you wanted to do this project and what you learned from it, and how that helped you in your career, and how that helped you made your decision to do an MS. And yeah, you should also mention a few details about certain courses that you would like to take in the department, and this could be in line with your goals. Probably, if you're going for a PhD, then the courses are just going to help you in your research. So you should choose these ideas. You should choose these carefully, and you should also look at a few professors in the department. It is very important to mention their details. At least you could give details about 2 to 3 professors and the labs that you like to work in. And yeah, this was something that I came across. And it could be optional, which is to include a line or two about the location of the university and the research and industrial opportunities that it offers, that particular city. I mean, this could be optional, but it will only go to show how well you have researched about that particular university and its vicinity. Yeah. To the next slide. Yeah. So the SOP acts like a bridge between your LORs and your resume. What this means is that all the details that are given in your resume and your LOR should go hand in hand with what is mentioned in your SOP. And it is okay to give a bit more details in your SOP, but then, like I said before, the technical part you needn't elaborate quite a lot on it. And then your SOP must not be longer than 2 pages, and it is preferred to have a font size of around 12. And yeah, this is a very important point. That is to try to limit your SOP to 1,000 to 1,200 words. And this is because quite a few universities actually ask you to have a word limit of around 1,000 words in your SOP. And the word reduction could really help then in that case. Yeah, and you must also write the SOP in a in a good flow. Basically, if you're explaining about one particular research project, then the motivation for that research project must flow into another project that you pursued. And you should try to avoid jumps, but yeah, this will be something that will be rectified over multiple iterations. The first draft of your SOP that you have ready, that try to include all your project details in that. And the first draft could be something very big and that contains a lot of details and multiple projects. And over iterations, you should ideally try to reduce the number of projects to around 2 to 3. Basically, the most significant ones that will be in align to the university requirements that you'll be applying to. And yeah, and finally, there is also this personal statement that many universities actually give you the option of filling. And in the personal statement, you could include details of personal achievements and about your background, or how those have actually shaped you in your academic career, and how that will actually help you in your MS and things like that. Again, this is an optional document, but it is highly suggested that you fill this out, because again it will go hand in hand with your SOP, and that personal front of your application can be explored using the personal statement that you provide. And in some cases, I even remember, like when I had an interview with the professor, he actually had read my personal statement and quoted a few lines from there. So, like I said, it is very important to give the personal statement. And yeah, you should remember that your statement of purpose will be reviewed by a few set of professors in the department. And if you mention details about them and about their research work and certain publications and things like that, they will be really happy with your profile, and might even offer you a research assistantship position from your first semester onwards. This is a really good thing, because once you're getting funded, then it's something good to have, because the cost of funding an MS could be a little expensive. Yeah, Chandravan, next slide. Yeah, so that was about the SOP, and now we'll come to the documents that you must keep ready before submitting the application. So you should have your transcripts, and like I said, try to apply for transcripts as early as possible. Ideally, I would suggest you to apply for transcripts as soon as your GPA gets updated on IRIS, or as and when you get your grade cards, you could apply, but that would take some time. So you could apply early on in Keep, and that might help out in the course of time. And yeah, you should have your resume, and this should preferably be one page, because I've seen in many universities they actually asked us to limit our resume to one page. And again, your resume should be very detailed, and I mean, it should be to the point. There are quite a few guides that are available online. You could refer them while drafting your resume, and I would say draft a very good resume, so that when somebody looks at it, they get a very good gist about your academic achievements and your goals. Then yes, the statement of purpose, which is the crux of the application. Then also the optional personal statement that you could include, but I would strongly suggest you to include. Then yeah, most important thing is your passport, because obviously you're going abroad, so you need to have a passport, and apply for this as soon as possible. If you are plan to apply for fall 23, I would suggest you to apply for a passport right now. So this could be a good time, so that by the time you apply, yes, you will have a passport in hand. Then yeah, if your rank in the department is within top 5 or within top 10, you could apply for a rank certificate from NITK. This is something that they give you, and you could include this in your application. And when universities look at that, it'll definitely help you out if you have a good rank. Then yeah, you should have your GRE and TOEFL score report. So the GRE and TOEFL score reports will be generated around 2 to 3 weeks after the exams are taken. So ideally, you should have taken all your exams. You should have timed your exams such that you have all your score reports ready by mid-November. So because all the applications, not the rolling ones, the general application deadlines are within the first week of December, or max. I think this the last of the applications is the application deadlines are December 15th. But yeah, if you have all these ready, and if it is a rolling admit, then it is advisable to submit as soon as possible. Yeah, Chandravan, next slide.
Yeah. Thank you, Fatwir, for
Yeah.
those insightful points. But I do have one question for you. So, you did talk about what you should include in your SOP, but what shouldn't you include in your SOP? What are the big no-nos of what are the big no-nos of writing an SOP? Essentially, could you probably share some points on that?
Yeah, so you could keep the technical details to a minimum. I mean, because there have been cases when people have included a lot of technical details about their project, and that just bores the person reading it. And your first paragraph of your SOP should be extremely it should motivate the person to read further on. Hence, you must spend quite some time in order to draft your first paragraph. Yeah, and in your first paragraph, try to not include too many details. It should just be a brief paragraph that introduces as to why you want to go ahead with your masters
Hmm.
or a PhD in the event.
Hmm.
So yeah, again, another no is maybe I don't think you need to. Yeah, I mean, as far as I know, this is it. Just try to keep it succinct.
Okay. So, I mean, there are many people who do write an SOP and they say, okay, I've been a boy genius from when I was 5 years old, 6 years
Yeah.
old. Do you think those points will have any impact to a
No,
person
no, no.
who's reading it, or will it have a negative one per se?
So, like I said, being a boy genius or a prodigy from a early on age are details that you could include in your personal statement. Just having
Hmm.
maybe a few qualifications that you consider extremely important could be highlighted in your SOP, but try to not keep it extremely personal because it is a statement of purpose that is trying to reason out as to why you want to get into masters or PhD. Your personal statement, on the other hand, could include details as to you're a if you were a boy genius and if you're a prodigy and how many awards you won in your young age and things like that.
All right. So if I were just to summarize, so you're saying personal statement, you can actually little go in more depth of what you are as a
Right.
person, your ethics and your personality per se, and have some part of technical uh, aspect to it. And an SOP is something like to the point and specific to the university as to how you're a good fit to the university and how you can benefit and how they will benefit from you. Correct?
That is true. I forgot to mention one thing. So once you have the final draft of your SOP ready, say by November 15th, you could leave probably the second last or the last paragraph that only wishes to include details about that particular university and certain labs. The other paragraphs of your SOP you needn't have to rephrase.
Yeah, okay. So basically you would basically say you're actually developing after your first final draft for a particular college, you're saying only the last two paragraphs need to be slightly modified so that
Right.
they fit the perspective of the college.
Hmm.
So there was this one point where you said you could probably include talking about the professors as well as what work they're doing in the labs. But sometimes don't you think that there could be a negative impact of this if the words are not phrased properly or the research is not done well on a particular
Oh,
professor?
oh,
Could you
definitely. I
elaborate on that?
mean,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So basically, if you do not do due diligence, and it will be caught. I mean, because if you were to just quote the line of your, so for instance, if you are mentioning about a publication that you have read about them, instead of take copy pasting the title of the publication, it would be better if you actually would go through the publication and explain at least in a line or two about what really motivated you. What was that specific topic that really inspired you, and what you would like to work on in further. If you were to just mention something general like, okay, I like machine learning and I want to do more research on it, it might not really help out.
Yeah, okay, all right. Thank you. That answers most of our questions. There are some more points that I would like to add on to an SOP. So the thing is, there's this huge question as to how I should phrase my particular projects in from my resume to also include in my SOP. So there's a simple structure that people could probably follow. So one line of what the project is, second line is what you did in the project, and third line is where you want to take your experience from this project further to. So if you keep the simple structure, what happens is you create a continuity within your particular SOP, so that when a person is reading they'll feel like, oh, okay, this is how he's developed himself, this is how he's come forward, and this is what he's done. So I think that could probably be a good factor, but obviously this is something personal to how I've done it per se. So it's up to you and how you want to go. And also one more thing is adding some uh, courses, the coursework. So one or two good courseworks that you've done from the college and also externally, for example mocks on NPTEL, and something that is I mean really important for your application, those can also be included. And one more point I would probably like to add on for when you talk about the professors is that how you could, like how we were saying that how you would benefit the college and the college should benefit from you, in a similar way you can probably say what skills you bring to the table for the professor. So when the professor is actually reading your SOP, you're like, oh, okay, this is the type of skill set that I'm looking for at this current point of time, or maybe I'm looking for it in 2 to 3 years time. So he wants to bring you on board so that you will be accustomed with all the stuff that's happening. So these are good points. Also, one more question for Fatwir. How exactly do you think GPA is, like, it's a big question out there for juniors. How important is GPA to your application?
So I would say having a GPA of 9 plus would be good enough. But again, having a very good GPA never really hurts your chances, especially when it comes to funding opportunities. Having a good GPA really, makes the professor believe that you've been a consistent student and that you can work on multiple subjects and you deliver results. So I would say when it comes to applications per se, there are certain universities that concentrate more on that are GPA centric. While applying to those places, obviously having a higher GPA would help. But on the whole, I don't think GPA is very extremely important when it comes to admits, as long as you have a 9 plus. But when it comes to funding, yes, it really does could make a difference, because say you want to do a TA-ship in some subject,
Mhm.
and that you if you have scored really well in your undergrad in that particular subjects, you could even say that you top the course, and you could even take the professor's LOR just for that particular subject to help improve your TA chances when it comes to the TA applications. But that's something Shrikant would be talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Fatwir. So next up we have Shrikant, who has interned at PLRI Lab at Germany, has also been awarded the IAS Fellowship in his third year, and also worked at Spectrum Lab at ISC. So Shrikant, over to you.
Hello, am I audible?
Yeah.
So for this part, I'll be focusing mostly on the funding part of the thing. So now I assume that by the time you're like focusing on this, you might have received some admits. Like you have received 2 or 3 or even more admits. You have shortlisted one college and you are ready that okay, I'm going to go to this college. Now the thing is funding. So I would say that it's essential after the application. This is the most essential part, because like it's essential to sort this out within a month of the admit, because universities, after they give you an admit, they have a certain window of say 1 month or 2 months. Within that window, you have to sort your finances and you have to submit a financial statement document saying that I can fund my master's degree or something like that. So there are a few deviations here. Like if you're applying for a PhD, you don't need to submit, like you don't need to wait for anything, because PhDs are generally funded. So along with your admit, you'll get a funding letter saying that you have the funding readily available as a research assistant or a scholarship or something like that. Because PhDs are like almost 99% always funded. So you can use those documents and say, yes, I am funded. So the application will go smoothly. Or like while you were applying for MS, you email the professor. It's generally very good to email the professors you were applying to. So while you're emailing the professors, you had a conversation, and he extremely uh, went forward with your application. Then he might even like recommend you for a research assistant position, and etc etc. So you might even get a RA. So apart from these, like if you get an RA, then again the letter would come in handy as funding. But if not, like a normal student, or someone who hasn't received an RA yet, a TA or a PhD scholarship, etc., then you'll have to you'll have to work on this financial statement part for at least a month. And your funding statement should cover these three things, like tuition, which is the like relevant to the university, which is different for each university. I would very much suggest before applying to the university that you check the tuition details given there. Like if you go to the financial aid websites and the tuition and costs website of a university, you'll get amount of information. And be sure to check for details like international student tuition details, because they have a lot of different students applying and they have categorized it appropriately. So check for the correct tuition details and note it down when, like, as Ayush said, you make an Excel sheet or something like that. So note this detail down as well, because while applying, funding is a very important thing you should consider. And the but the funding should cover tuition, living, and other expenses. And other expenses, one important thing which I highlighted here is health insurance, because now you might not find it very much important, but while going there, health insurance from the university is a very important thing. Like it's mandatory to have it from the university. So uh, be sure that your funding will cover this thing, otherwise you'll face a lot of problems there. And funding requirements is actually like very much varying across the universities. Like it may vary across countries, it may vary across programs and universities. Say for country, so if you are applying for USA, the tuition rates are very much high, like compared to Canada or Europe. Canada has a lower tuition rate. Like you can expect the like 1 year tuition fees to be 20 lakhs or something like that in Canada. But in USA, they generally have a high tuition rate for the MS programs and the MBA programs. So Canada or Europe generally less tuition fee, but USA has is a pretty expensive in this side. And of course, universities. You have private universities which definitely have a high tuition rate, and public funded universities are like they're mostly funded by public. So most of these universities have less tuition fee, but there are exceptions. And of course, the program matters. The program matters a lot regarding tuition fee. There is MS, which is kind of in between. Like it's expensive. PhD, it's funded, so you don't have to worry about financing. But if it's not funded, in some rare case, then it's very expensive, because you'll be paying tuition for 5 years instead of 2 years. And MBA is also expensive. It's considered more expensive than MBA, MS program. So you need to sort these things out before like applying to the university, etc. You'll find these details in these websites, and uh, it should come under the university research part. So the next, so we have types of funding, like how can you fund. So there are some things which you can look at, like university based scholarships. So universities actually, some universities, not all, some provide merit based scholarships. Like the University of Southern California offers a variety of scholarships in their website itself. Like while you get an admit, they'll redirect you to a like portal where there is a list of scholarships. You can apply for them using your resume itself, and you'll get shortlisted and be called for an interview or a test or something like that. And the scholarship program will continue thereafter. And there is this Knight Hennessy scholarship from Stanford University, which act like if you are applying to Stanford University, you should definitely consider going for this scholarship, because it's fully funded for a graduate degree up to 3 years. So if you're taking an MS, it's fully funded. You don't have to fund anything. Tuition, living, and even travel expenses are funded. And like as it is from Stanford, it's quite very, like I can say it's very very ambitious, because if I'm not wrong, it takes 90 international students from the entire world. That's it. So, like, I definitely encourage if someone is like going for Stanford to definitely apply for this, as it's a like big burden to take off your head if your funding is sorted. And that's the scholarships. And one painful thing about scholarships is that this is it. Like mostly this is it, because other universities generally don't provide scholarships to Indian students or even international students. They only provide scholarships for like US citizens. They have federal scholarships and all those things. So mostly scholarships, apart from these, like you have to search a bit for in the university, but that's it. Like you cannot expect much. That's hard to I want to put it there. And the after that you have assistantships, and these things are flexible. Like if you have a good contact with your professor, you can get a research assistantship or a teaching assistantship there. But like there is a process. Teaching assistantships, you have to apply in their graduate, like after going there, like after you attend the university one semester or something, you have to apply through their application process. But research assistant is like it's governed by the professor, so the professor can decide by the first semester itself, or by second semester, I want this student as a TA, so, as an RA, so they can recommend, and you can get the assistantship. And these positions are extremely rewarding. They are very hard, like they're very like expecting positions, because like you'll have to work a lot for these positions. Research assistant means you have to help the professor with the research. Teaching assistants means you have to conduct some doubt sessions or classes. You might even grade their assignments, grade their test papers, etc. So work is there, but it's very rewarding, because generally uh, these assistantship positions come with a tuition waiver and a stipend, plus health insurance covered. Or in some universities, you might find it there is only stipend plus health insurance, or in some universities just stipend. Anyways, it's highly recommended you go with this option, because it's a good way to earn while you're studying in the university. Like if you're earning as well as studying in your university, you try to get to sort the finances out then and there. So assistantship is like the second most sorted thing for funding your MS. Next slide. And then next slide. Ah. Then there are some loan-based scholarships from India. Like you might find a lot of them. I have only included two, because like they were like very easy to come get information about. There are Indian organizations like Jane Tata Endowment Scholarship, where there is a merit-based loan scholarship from 1 lakh to 10 lakh. It's like there is a loan, they'll give you without interest, if I'm not wrong, and like it's merit-based. So you'll mostly have to submit some documents like transcripts. You might have even have to submit LORs, etc., to get this scholarship in your hand. And there might be interview processes as well. Like as you complete one stage, they'll call you for an interview, etc. And after that, like they'll be ready to fund your MS for 10, like this specific amount, 1 lakh to 10 lakhs. And similar is for KC Mahindra, like KC Mahindra Education Trust. It's the statement is actually like this: the first three applicants will get 8 lakhs, and all the other like awardees of the scholarship will get 4 lakhs. Now, like you might consider this amount less, but depending on your country of education, this might be a significant amount. Like if you're going to Europe, then 4 lakhs or 8 lakhs is a significant amount, as like it might be half or like one fourth of your tuition fee. So it's like it's very rewarding to have this scholarship under you. And there are other scholarships like Aga Khan Fellowship, or like some other scholarships. You can like check on their websites and Google it. But mostly these are loan-based scholarships from India, so you have to repay in the future. But considering the job opportunities in US, repaying these loan scholarships are not very difficult. And the fifth point is education loan from Indian banks. This is the most sorted, like this is the most approached thing while coming to funding your MS. You take loan from banks. So if you're taking loans from banks like SBI, Punjab National, etc., like these banks which actually require collateral, even HDFC Credila requires collateral, and whenever they require collateral, it's very essential that you like sort the collateral thing before as early as possible. Like uh, why? Because if you're not, then these banks will take a lot of time. Like SBI actually, when I went to the SBI for the collateral related thing, like they said that for verifying a collateral, like if you say that you have a collateral, they say that for verifying a collateral, they might take 1 month. So you might not have that much time in your hand just to like verify a collateral, then get a loan letter from them, then upload it in the university portal. So I would recommend that like you have some part of this education loan prepared before you get an admit. Like at least get your collateral things verified by a lawyer or something before your admit comes, so that while your admit comes, the verification part is done, and only the like bank only you have to worry about which bank to approach or which financial agency you have to approach to get these loans. Because otherwise, if you go for these financial agencies to go about themselves, each financial agency will take a different amount of time, and you trust me, it's not very worth it after the wait, because like they might make you wait for 1 month because one of these officials just misplaced your document or like sent a wrong document. Then it will take a lot of time. So I suggest if you're going through SBI, Punjab National, HDFC, or any Indian banks, sort as much as possible before they admit. It's very good, because after you submit your financial documents, it's a little bit chill, because then you're waiting for some other documents to come, which I'll probably cover. Then like otherwise you are like generally universities have, just as I said, after year admit they have 1 or 2 months to submit the financial documents, and I suggest you don't go to the last date. It's very tiresome, and like it might drain your and your parents' energy running for these loans, etc. And then there are this last point in education loans from foreign agencies. So there are some agencies which in like they're funded by the foreign banks and foreign investors. They don't require collateral while they're providing student loans. They claim that the university which you are applying to and your own standing will actually determine whether you'll get a loan or not your collateral. So these agencies offer loan without any collateral requirement, but they can charge little higher interest rates. The the advantage of Indian banks like SBI, etc., are like they have a very less interest rate. Like the minimum I think is SBI around 8.6. So these charge a little higher interest rates, but they like the loan process is very quick. Like you can get a loan within 15 days, like entire process done, a confirmation loan letter from their agency within 15 days, as opposed to the other banks which might take 1.5 months or like 1 month if you're not sorted out these things clearly. But as these they have high interest rates, and they have a different process of like giving you funds. So you have to sort these things while you are working, like you're working on these websites. So I suggest you look at them. Some of these agencies are Leap Finance, Empower Finance, and Prodigy Finance. Personally, I went with Prodigy Finance because the like in my case, the SBI was like planning to take a long time for them to process a loan. So considering my deadline, I decided that my SBI application might not get accepted before my deadline. So I went ahead with these foreign agencies. But I suggest if you can get an SBI, then definitely do that. Like SBI loan, then definitely do that. But uh, get ready the finances before your admit, so that it's a smooth process afterwards. Next. Next slide. Okay, so the financial statements are uploaded, and now you are waiting for something. The something like you're waiting for is I-20 form. This is a form which actually contains your service number, which is actually related to your visa. Like it's a number that will like interest you that you are coming to US, and this is some kind of an ID. So what you do is, after receiving your I-20, like after you submit financial documents, within 20 or like 28 days, you'll get the I-20 form. Like you'll get the I-20. While submitting financial documents, you'll have to fill some details, some of your details. that itself is included as the I-20 form. After 28 days, you'll receive the document I-20, mostly by email. And after receiving I-20, you can start doing these things. First thing is you have to fill DS-160, which is actually a document which will actually schedule you a visa appointment or something like that. So what you have to do is you have to like this is the document. DS-160 is a document that's saying that you are registering for a visa, student visa. You are as you're an international student here from here, you will be going under F1 visa. So to register the to the visa process, you have to fill the DS-160 form. And while filling the form, you will have to refer your I-20 so that like the service number etc. are recorded. And while you are filling these DS-160 forms etc., these are visa related processes. Parallelly, you can look for apartments there at US because like it finishes off like really quick. The apartments are booked really fast because most of the students actually have seniors and some contacts there. They get their things done quickly. So we suggest that even you start looking for apartments as soon as you get your I-20. Like there might be some Facebook groups, etc. You can look for Facebook groups regarding your university where you'll find a lot of WhatsApp groups listed or some mode of communication listed where you can approach some people who can be possibly your roommates and get the roommate thing sorted. It might take 2 to 3 weeks to sort the apartment thing because they'll have first you have to get a get some roommates, then you have to look for some apartments, then you'll have to have a virtual tour with the like the person who is owning the house owner, then you'll have a lease agreement signed etc etc. After that you're like that is your apartment and your apartment is sorted. So then flight tickets, obviously flight tickets, it's very recommended that you book them as early as possible, but in I-20 form there is a restriction that you when your classes started, the date at which your class start, you can only book a ticket to USA one latest by 1 month before that. If you book earlier than 1 month, you're not allowed to enter US by the F1 visa status. So you check the class start date and go 1 month before and try to book a date after that. So it's like and it's recommended to book flights as early as possible because you know the prices are very much fluctuating. And this after like now we'll come back to the DS-160 part, the visa part. Your when you fill your DS-160, you take information from your I-20 etc. and fill out these forms. And after filling out these forms, then you have to schedule your visa appointment. The visa appointment scheduling takes like some amount of money before you can schedule. Like I think it's around $160 and or something around that. But like as soon as you get to the scheduling part, they'll ask to pay your visa scheduling fee, etc. Then afterwards, you'll have some window slots you can select. So visa scheduling is a bit tiresome process because the day which you want your visa scheduling or like the day which you're doing your visa scheduling, there are a lot of people doing the exact looking for the exact date at that exact time. So you'll have to do a lot of refreshing. You'll have to do a lot of working on that website till you get a slot. So it's a tiresome process. You'll have to waste at least 12 hours in aggregate for the visa scheduling, and you'll have to schedule 2 dates. The visa process for F1 students is like first date is scheduled for biometric verification, where you go to the embassy. Like there are 5 consulates in India, if I'm not wrong. It's Madras, I mean Chennai, then Mumbai, then Kolkata, then Delhi, then in Hyderabad. these 5 consulates, you can choose your consulate and schedule an appointment. First appointment, you have to go and you have to do verification details, etc. You have to submit some documents or get it scanned, etc., etc. And the next day is your visa interview date. So on this visa interview date, you have to get some more documents in handy. You can refer them. They are mostly your passport. You have to get your passport, your I-20, your college offer letter, your financial documents, your resume. Like while going there, you'll find out that they will be asking, the interviewers will be asking questions regarding how will you plan to fund your education, how will you be a good fit to the program, how do you think you'll cope up with the education at US, etc. All the relevant questions will be asked. So naturally you have to carry all the relevant documents, so your funding letter, your university letters, your passport, your and while filling out the I-20 form, like you'll definitely carry your I-20, then you'll have DS-160, then visa appointment letters, and all these letters, like you can check them in the internet. They are like, these letters are like extremely important while you're going there. And while you're giving these letters, and they'll check all your application details and etc., and the interview process is done. And after the interview process, it's there is nothing much left, because then you have to plan some, like going there, uh, that's which, like of the necessary items to be carried, etc., etc., that are like parallel details which you can worry about it. And one more thing which you can think about is immunizations, which is important. Like the COVID vaccination is the top priority. It's extremely important. And apart from that, you will have some immunization requirements, which is posted on the university website itself. Like you can search for that, and it's definitely good to search on the US Embassy website or like the immigration website as to what an F1 student or what an immigrant to the US is supposed to have while coming to the US. So these are the processes which I think are like very essential while you're handling the visa and appointment scheduling processes.
Yeah. Thank you, Shrikant. So, just a quick question.
Hmm.
So, before I ask this question, there's actually one statistics which I would like to share, or basically numbers. So,
Hmm.
usually a private college within US would cost around $100,000, including living, health insurance, as well as tuition fees.
Hmm.
And while a public, you can assume to be around $75,000. So,
Hmm.
keeping this in mind, and also the fact that after a master's, the pay of a job is around 84,000 to maybe 1,125,000 dollars. Um, how important do you think of a factor is funding your masters, even though you feel like you could probably repay your loan within 1 or 2 years? Like, how
Hmm.
important of a factor do you think it is?
Like, okay, this is a very crucial thing which came up in my application itself. Like, the thing is, my Michigan University application, they had actually, the Michigan is a public university, but it's a very expensive university. So in my case, the one of the factors affecting was the collateral or the requirements were less than the Michigan University, like the fees, the total financial requirements. My collateral was a little less. And while approaching my seniors, while I asked, the thing is that the seniors suggest it's not a big deal. You can cover it up while you're working in US. You're while you're working in US, definitely you can cover it up, because the starting salary itself is like the average is $105,000, which is like very huge amount. Within 2 or 3 years, you can cover it. But the problem is you have to acquire a loan before you can like say that I can cover up the loan. So for acquiring a loan, the collateral should match, or there should be enough funds, enough background funds, etc., to back your application. So it's very essential to take care of this funding part. That's where like these foreign agencies which I mentioned, they help me a lot because they don't require collateral. They only check the university rate ranking and my standing, etc. My academic point of view, etc., is considered to be strong there. So they it's essential. Like when I say it's essential to sort the finances as early as possible and as thoroughly as possible, because like people will say okay, it will be covered, and definitely it will be covered, but it's important to acquire the funding before you can think of covering it.
Correct. Correct.
So if you have a chance, go for like the best funding opportunities like RA ship, TA ship, etc. If you have by the time you send out your applications for uh, the MS programs, start parallelly start mailing the professors, etc., to acquire something like some confirmation from their side that in while going there or in future they might give you an assistantship.
All right.
Or
All
you
right.
or the best is like acquire an try to acquire assistantships before itself. It's a very good thing. And some universities like University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, there is no worry regarding funding because the only people admitted to the university are the universities who are getting the RA, like the
Mhm.
students who are getting the RA. So unless you have an RA, you don't have an admit itself. So UIUC is research oriented in that manner because it aims that every student coming to their master's program should also be introduced to the research programs there. Like it's not, UIUC, there is a lot of research focus there. You cannot just go there, do a master's and like
Mhm.
think of not doing any research at all because you'll definitely be doing research. So there are some universities like that which confirm a RA for students coming there, and there are some universities in which you are not even eligible for an RA. Like
Mhm.
RA ship is actually reserved for PhD students. You might find this sentence in their website. So there you know, okay, while applying to this university, I need to check the process of like I need to check the tuition fee, I need to check the total expenses, and I need to check my standing, my financial standing. And that's very important because otherwise you're just giving a lot of headache to your parents by taking a very expensive university.
Correct. Correct. Okay, so we'll move on to the next section here, and I'll be taking this up. So, uh, I'll to add on to this visa process, there's something called as a visa waiver that the people are eligible for. So, a particular person would be, or you would be eligible for a visa waiver if you had a previous issued visa before, basically before, like before, as in after 2008, essentially. So, if your visa was issued after 2008 of January, then you would be that is one of the requirements for you to get a visa waiver, so that I mean, not a visa waiver but a visa interview waiver, if I had to be more specific. And also, one more requirement is the latest visa that you did apply to was not rejected in the process. And that is also another requirement. And also, within the visa, when you get a visa, there'll be an annotation section, and in this annotation section, you should make sure there's no word of clearance. Basically, this is like an extra security step that the visa people have taken to make sure that you have a security clearance to go to the US. And if you do have this words on your visa, then you will not be applicable for a visa interview waiver. Also, but this doesn't essentially mean that you will be uh, not called at all for an interview. It just means that there's a high percentage of chance without an interview they will be giving you a visa for F1. So usually I've seen in the cases that people who've had a B1 or a B2 in the past 5 years, they've actually not been called at all for an interview, and they've been issued the visa. So that is one thing you can be looking at. But then there are certain cases in where you've been moving from a H4 or a H1, and they've been rejected for this interview process, and they've been called again for the visa waiver. Sorry, for the interview per se. So this is one thing you could probably think of as you're going through your visa process. Then a few points I wanted to add about my specialization and my admits. Basically, so basically work on robotics, and this is a field which is up and coming right now in the US, also around the world, and there are specialized programs for this. But there's a huge problem in this robotics field in terms of masters, I would say, is that just MS in robotics, there are very less few good programs that people could apply to. We have good amount of research as well as the coursework that you will be interested in. So there are here are the few of the colleges and courses I've listed down. So one thing I would want you people who are looking for robotics per se is that you should be little flexible. For example, US is really known for its flexibility in going for different labs, but again, it depends and on the college you're going. Also, the courses which you can be taking up will also be really flexible. So, for example, you may have 10 course requirements to complete, but you have over 200 courses to pick from, and you can pick from any courses. So it really doesn't matter as to what your specialization within the particular courses or what specialization you picked. But on the other hand, there may be some colleges where you have a particular specialization you want to take up. So for example, robotics, if I take up robotics specialization, I may have only 30 or 40 courses which I can pick from. So these are some things that you should probably look into whenever you're actually going think of robotics as one of your majors. So obviously there is UPenn robotics, which is currently ranked to number one. And but the thing is, UPenn robotics is actually made out of three different schools, which is UPenn electrical, also mechanical, as well as the computer science department. So whatever courses are offered in these departments are also offered within the robotics program as well. So that is one thing in UPenn. So um, a person who actually wants to specialize in control systems, let's say, who has all the courses in the electrical department, so it really wouldn't matter as to say if I get a robotics admit or an electrical admit, because sometimes what I've noticed is these robotics MS in robotics have a really low admittance rate, and they have many people who are applying. This is true for all the programs, but it's just that then one more requirement is sometimes RL or CS or some things which the college really focuses on. For example, if I had to take specifically UC Berkeley, what I noticed is many of the professors just work on manipulation. So you controlling a robotic arm or the haptics or the feedbacks of manipulation, or one professor does work on autonomous navigation and car movement. But there's very less now professors who do work on quadruped robots or legged robots in that sense. So in this case, the thing is you have to there's no robotic specific program itself. So if you're interested in manipulation, or you have some experience in manipulation or quadruped robots, then you can apply to the mechanical or EC department, and then obviously work under the professors who are part of these departments and have their labs under these departments as well. So this adds so it's really specific manipulation. I mean, almost 70 to 75% of the professors there work on this, but and it's one of the top universities for robotics as well. So keeping this in mind, you should be flexible as to say, okay, even though there's no specific robotics program at the college, they have good labs in which you can actually work in. So it doesn't really matter as to say what my majors is, which is EC or mech. So if for and also one more thing is, if you had to look at Ohio State is another example which I would like to bring up. The robotics stuff within the EC program is very less, and they don't do much at all. But then Ohio State is really known for its robotics research and papers that it's published in the US itself, because that the robotics whole part is under the mech department. So in this case you would apply to the EC department, do some you shouldn't just blindly apply. You should see that the courses which you're taking there are you're interested in, and you're making sure that you will be able to do well in them as well. Because if you're thinking of going for a master's, is you're thinking of building a skill set that would help you in developing for your job in the future. So and but like I said, you should be flexible and say, okay, I'll apply to the EC, but then work with the mechanical department professors after I go there. So having this in interdependence between the labs is something that happens always in the US. So you should probably keep this in mind. uh, there is also one more stats. For example, Georgia Tech Robotics. It's really well known, but the program is also really new. So it started around 2 to 3 years back, and the intake for new programs is also really less. So in Georgia Tech Robotics, they have 5 different specializations, but in each of these specializations they take only 10 to 15 people. So literally what you're fighting for is like 15 seats for 600 applicants, is what I'm trying to say. So the thing is, the robotic specific MS programs are very less in number, but the applicants are still equivalent to the number, equivalent to what you would get for other programs as well. So getting a robotic specific program for your masters is really hard, and so you should keep that in mind as well as you apply. um, yeah. So one thing is, I would like to say is, when you're applying for robotics program, looking for some robotics MS, is make sure that you follow the 3-4-3-3 rule, which is essentially four ambitious, three mid-tier colleges that you could go to, and three safe colleges. These colleges you should be sure that you will go to even if you get admitted. So even if you don't get any other admits and you're stuck with three safe colleges, you will be going to these colleges exactly. Yeah, and obviously keep a flexible mind, which I've been talking about in the previous slide. And also one thing I would like to say is, there is this thing that there's a lot of inclination in robotics itself, where many people just work on the simulation and very less implemented on the hardware. And also many of these programs, for example, I would like to say is Oregon Robotics, which I did apply, but I was waitlisted to. Is essentially Oregon Robotics works a lot on the RL side or the software side. So they're probably looking for people in the MS field who would be working on the reinforcement learning and other stuff. But very less people they'll be looking on implementing on the hardware, as well as trying to get the results from that. So I mean, they would have obviously lab assistants and other research or TA people who would be working on this from last few years. So the requirements for these particular positions also will be less, and they will have probably a less tendency to take people who work on this particular robotics part of it. And obviously there are three main areas: mechanical, electronics, and computer science, which you can take up. And on a research perspective point of view, there's a huge amount of research that's going on: RL, image processing, navigation, and stuff like this, that's coming up in the next few years. And to end up, these are our contact informations if you would like to reach out to us in the future, or if you have any doubts. And that will be the end of the presentation. I'll just stay here for a few minutes, and then we'll probably answer one or two questions from the live chat and from the doc that was filled. All right. So this PPT will be shared with you later on as well, if I'm not wrong. And so I'll stop sharing. Okay. So for the first question, let's move on. There's this question from Nipun. So this is directed towards Ayush. So Ayush, the question is, for electronics related courses like processor design and SOC, how do you build a profile which best fits the universities that you can probably apply to, essentially?
So from what I've seen, at least, especially when it comes to processor design and system on chip, largely what the industry at least has been gravitating towards is building chips for high compute applications. You have machine learning, or say cryptography, or anything that's just high compute in the sense of, in a very manual sense. So what's happening is, since these particular processors are being built specifically for these applications, it really helps if you have a working understanding of the applications themselves. So it's not necessary to just have an understanding of the hardware side of things, that is the processor design side of things, but it's also important to have a really good understanding of the applications. So learning about machine learning, deep learning, because those are the applications, and learning about computer vision, because that's also pretty big now. So having a basic understanding of these things would also be pretty helpful. Um, Moreover, I think it shows if you've on your transcript, if you've done a bunch of courses on these kind of topics, say the VLSI topics or computer architecture, or even the machine learning topics. So it really helps if it's there in your transcript. If it's not there in your transcript in your departments, or just weren't able to take those courses for whatever reason, you can take up a MOOC and attach the certificates in the application itself. They have options to do that. And once you attach the certificates and you put up the MOOC, then it's as good as any other course. And especially if the MOOC is pretty reputed, you're pretty good to go. And so that is one thing. Then make sure you speak to a couple of seniors and for that particular part of your field. So for that particular aspect of computer architecture, if you're taking, then let's say you're working on take for example what I've been working on, because I think that'd be the best I can answer to. You're working on accelerators in particular. There's a certain number of courses, certain set of courses, certain reputed courses that people recommend you do before you even start working on projects in this particular field. And once you get that basic information into your head, that's when you can approach professors inside and outside NITK to work on these particular projects. And that's pretty much how you build your profile. You start off by putting that knowledge in your head somehow or the other. There are YouTube playlists by this German professor I had initially gone through. You don't get certified for that, obviously, but the information enters your head. Then once you have the basic information, you can take up a very structured, very nice MOOC. The most famous one is the Princeton University Computer Architecture. Then there's the CS61C by Stanford University on the RISC-V ISA and basic computer architecture. So you can take up all these courses, mention it to the people you're applying to for projects that you've done these courses, you have this knowledge in your head. And once you've done that, then it comes down to the projects pretty much, right? So you do the projects, you gain the experience there, and you work with the tools, you work with the frameworks, you work with the softwares, you work with all that. Then develop your skill set there, and then upskill yourself over the next 2-3 years, and hopefully that's enough to build your profile in that particular sense. Yeah, you learn the necessary languages also. It's all part of the process, but the first step is probably to finish those courses, and then as and when you approach the mentors, they themselves guide you as to what languages you use. So you could be using Perl or TCL for the scripting part. You could be using Verilog or VHDL for the hardware part, or you could be using OpenCL if you're if you want to be extra flexible about it, or you can even use Chisel if you're because some projects it's really beneficial if you use Chisel over the HDL languages. So this all comes down to the project largely, and your mentors will definitely be able to help you out with that. But first, go through the courses and also
All
just
right.
yeah,
Mhm.
keep that in your
Okay.
in your mind.
Yeah, so we'll probably take one or two more questions, and there is this one question. I guess I get we have people who have Ayush has done an internship within the industry, but and then has also done an research internship, and people who have done only research internship. So this question is directed to all of you. So this question is from Palgun, and his question is, what should I be doing in my second year summer break to help get an MS admit? Also, should I focus on internship season or aim for a research internship after my third year? So, if each one of you could probably give a few points on this from your perspective, Fatwir could probably start off.
Yeah. So, according to me, if you are inclined towards academia and you are, if you want a PhD somewhere down the line, it will be highly recommended that you do a research internship because it gives you a flavor of research and helps build your profile that way. So once you do a research internship, you could probably try for a publication. That way, you get to meet more, especially if it's a conference, you get to network very well with more professors in your domain and reach out to more people. And you'll also get a very good idea about different labs that conduct extensive research in your domain when you do literature survey. So, if you are interested in academia and want to go ahead with a PhD somewhere down the line, as it need not necessarily be after your after your bachelor's. If you're sure that okay, somewhere down the line I need to do a PhD, then I think a research internship might help. But yeah, if you want to keep both industry as well as research open, I guess it makes sense to have a flavor of both.
All right. Okay. Ayush, maybe some points from your end.
Yeah, I kind of agree with, I completely agree, in fact, with what Fatwir has just said. And it's about you realizing what would help you best. So, frankly, the reason I took up an industrial thing is because I wanted to have that balance of research and industry in my thing. I've also come across a lot of my peers who've taken up just research and just industry, and that's helped them out because that's what their plan was. So, it comes down to whether you want that industry experience, whether you want that research experience only, do you want a blend of that, because each thing is good in its own way. It's not like you'll be missing out on. It's not like there's no right or wrong answer to this. It's just go according to your plan. I personally feel that industry experience was pretty helpful because I was also able to write in my SOP about um, how that particular industrial experience told me that. So the story that I wrote about the industrial experience was basically taking industrial experience. This is what I realized I have to learn more, and this is what your masters can provide me that can help me build on this particular skill set. So that also is something that you can look into, and that's largely why I had applied for industrial in the first place. So, but yeah, there's no wrong answer to this.
All right. Shrikant?
In my opinion, I guess like what Fateh said is right. If you have a oriented goal of research, then you should definitely go for research internship after third year. But like if you say you're a second year student, then I would say first after second year you have a summer, you try a research internship. It's not that bad. Like you apply for positions like in ISC or IT Madras or anywhere. Like try a research internship, like see like do some research. You'll get to work like when you go to these labs like ISCs labs and these IT, there are like experienced researchers working there. You'll get to know the flavor of like what is research, what is actually happening, and what is the way of working there.
Mhm.
And like you might refer to your seniors or some like you can definitely ask your seniors how is industrial work done, like because they are very different. Like if you compare the work done in a research lab or an industrial organization, they are very different. The goal is different and the orientation is different. So I would say first do a research internship after second year if possible. Like I'm not compelling it, but I suggest you to do it because you'll get a flavor of research. Because even in masters, there is like some universities you'll be expected to do some research. So that is one thing. But industrial experience, it's not a drawback at all. It's very good to have, especially if the area which you're going is highly practical. There are a lot of applications. Then industrial experience is very good if you approach like for masters and you say, okay, I have been working on under this company and they have been building this. And if you say to the professor, then okay, research experience can be taught even after that because you are matured much. But this industrial experience will definitely help you. So, like in my opinion, if possible, like after second year is the time where you have a flexibility to like you have an opportunity to take a research internship, because after third year it's either you have to take a choice, either it's industrial or research.
Correct. Yeah.
So like while you'll find out while you're exploring the research internship, you'll find out whether you're cut out for research or you want a particular like a similar kind of a thing, not exploring much, then go for industrial. Then you want application, then definitely go for industrial.
Mhm.
Because even research has a lot of like good applications. But one thing I noticed while I tried my like I did my industrial internship was that there is a structure. Like industrial internships are very structured, while research internships you are carrying out a lot of experiments. So
Mhm.
you have to be flexible, you have to work in a structured and organizational manner, and you have to be able to carry out fast experiments also if you're uh, working as an engineer or somewhere. So like after second year, research internship is a good opportunity. I suggest you take it. But after third year, you'll come to know whether you're cut out for research or you like from your seniors or somewhere you gain some information as to how the industry works.
Mhm.
Then you have to like decide on your own, like which area would you want to go. And after working on industry, like some people actually take up the pre-placement offer or take up the placement offers, then work for 2 years, then go for masters, which is actually a very big plus point for them.
Mhm.
So I would suggest like you have to research some, like you have to do some work in this manner. Like as I said, you'll have to, while you're working, you'll come to know which area you are cut out to uh, go for, and which area gives you a more satisfaction to work.
All right. Okay. So that covers probably as to what a person should be thinking of essentially while he's thinking of going for industry or research, and he final end goal is masters itself. So we'll
With.
just answer one more question, and I would like to take this up. So there's this question by Rachana. The question is, is it advisable to pursue a master's in computer science abroad after doing a BTech in mechanical engineering in NITK? So what I would like to say for this question is that uh, it's really much possible if you're going to the US, because they really don't have much strict requirements on the particular courses you have to complete. So moving from a mechanical to that of a computer science perspective is really possible. So you can go ahead and take a look at the different universities. But there is there's one thing that you need to really keep in mind when you're doing such a thing. So when you're doing is essentially that you have to state in your SOP really firmly as to say why you're trying to go for this, even though you've done a BTech in mechanical, but you want to go pursue masters in computer science. Many people have done it, and it's really possible. But you need to have a really strong SOP as to say why you want to change your fields. Also, you should have good number of projects. So in this case, considering the fact that you can probably do a job after your BTech in the computer science field itself, like at because IT industry is really well known, and there's a lot of opportunities in India. Doing a job in the computer science and then going for a master's would really benefit you. That is only if you're going to the US. Europe has specific requirements for course completion, and like Ayush had stated before, completing the mocks will take some time, and that may not happen during your BTech. So obviously, doing the mocks and job, and then probably then going forward to your masters in the Europe could be a possibility for you. But there is like in my case personally, I'm also going cross discipline, moving from a BTech in electronics and communication and engineering and going for robotics, which is not a direct transfer. So I really had to have a strong SOP as to say why I want this shift. Also, I needed to have the projects and other stuff to back it up. But the problem with me is getting a job within the robotics field and having a pay which is suitable, I would say, is essentially hard to get in India for the robotics field right now. So give you a simple perspective. So I would like to, as I will be taking up usually a job in the core field in electronics and a little bit of control systems, but that is still considered core. So you would probably get around an LPA around 15, 12 to 15, let's say. But if you do a simple calculation as to say even on a private university how much of cash you would get essentially by just doing a TA and an RA is direct to hand, you would get around $1,300, which is around 1.2 or 1 to 1.2 lakhs uh, on an average per month. And this is, I'm not talking about CTC, this is after tax reduction and everything. So the thing is, even when I go to the master, when I go to the US and do an RA and a TA, I'm earning more than what I would essentially earn here to my hand while I'm doing a job. So taking this into the consideration, there are many points you should take. So have numbers and statistics to prove as to say why you want to go here or why you want to take a defer year. So obviously, if you're taking a job in a field that supports what you're going to do in your masters, then go ahead, do a job for 1 or 2 years. It's much easier to get in admits, and this is also seen pretty much well because in the Gyan review that we'll be sending out in the few days, it's much better than what we've had in the previous years because we have current graduates, also past graduates who have got admits with us, and as well as business and MBA people who have got admits as well. So it covers all the aspects of going for masters in all the different fields. So make sure you take a look and read and have a perspective as to people who are directly going for masters right after their BTech and also for people who have taken a job and going. So look at their profiles, take a look at what their thought process is, what they did in their BTech, and so on and so forth, as to decide which is the best way for you to go forward. Unless any of the panelists have anything to add, I guess we can close off the session here.
Nothing from my side.
Fatwir, Ayush.
Yeah, nothing from my side also.
Yeah, same here. See. Thanks for hosting.
Yeah, thank you guys. It was really nice to hear all the good points from all of you guys. And make sure juniors, please do reach out to any of us. We will be ready to review and give you any tips for your master's applications. Thank you.